Hey guys, how's it going? And in today's video I'll be going over the top categories of items to look for when it comes to like going to garage sales and reselling locally for retail arbitrage, or just buying stuff on the secondhand market. These are going to be items that you can buy and probably easily flip if you can get them for a pretty good price. Going to go into the category itself as well as some certain things to look out for. So that being said, I'll get right into it. The first item is going to be a pretty simple one. It's just going to be video games and video game consoles. A lot of older video games are starting to get a lot more collectibles, so if you know what to look out for and you pick up stuff for a good enough price, typically you make a pretty solid profit on it. A couple things to look out for when it comes to this is going to be like Nintendo games, specifically stuff like Mario and really popular releases on their consoles. So stuff like Mario, Pokemon, old Game Boys, stuff like that's going to be the, where the highest profit margins are. But you can still make money when it comes to other things. A lot of the time people are willing to get rid of some old games for like extremely cheap. For example, the PlayStation 2 is a system where people let games go for dirt cheap just because it's a system that came out in, the early 2000s, and the graphics are, they're the early 2000s graphics, so when it comes to the casual video game player, they're not playing the system anymore, and this just makes it to where people are willing to get rid of their stuff for pretty cheap. And you can flip these for a couple bucks a video game, but a lot of the time you can get like multiple video games for under $10, $20. So it might be a good idea to pick some up, just to be able to flip them to your local GameStop or game store. Maybe you can trade it in for in-store credit, or you can part out the video games online and make a couple bucks per pop. Personally, I do this with like Pokemon and Nintendo games. They're the easiest to make money on, mainly just because there's a demand for them like at all times. I know that if I have a Pokemon game that I pick up for at least under $10, I can at least make $15 to $30 on it, depending on them. Some of the honorable mentions are the original Game Boy ones, so blue and red. And then Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Platinum, all the ones that released on Nintendo DS are pretty in demand just because they were really good games and they're highly sought after people that are trying to replay the games that they played in their childhood. I grew up playing these games, and now I'm 20 years old, almost 21, and I have the money to go out and buy these things. Personally, when Pokemon Go came out in 2016, I spent $50 on a copy of Pokemon Soul Silver. And I can understand why people would want to spend good money in order to get their hands on these games. So it's definitely something to look out for when you're going to yard sales and stuff like that. The next category of things is going to be clothing, specifically t-shirts. I could get into shoes and like old jeans and stuff, but I think that t-shirts is where the money's at when it comes to, thrifting or going to garage sales and yard sales. T-shirts and hats, just because you can get hats for pretty cheap, as well as t-shirts, and a lot of people don't realize that the t-shirts they have can actually be resold on the on the online market for pretty good amounts of money, mainly just because it's not a specific release of a t-shirt that makes it expensive. It's the fact that it's old. So you could go to an estate sale and get a bunch of t-shirts from the 1990s, based off of a sports team, for example the Chicago Bulls, and you would just make a lot of money because those are very cool shirts, and they didn't they don't make them anymore. They're vintage. So some of these shirts can sell upwards of hundreds of dollars depending on what you get. Band t-shirts do really good, like Metallica, Def Leppard, stuff like that. Those always do extremely well. And then like when it comes to the other categories of t-shirts you're going to want to look for when it comes to looking for vintage t-shirts, pop culture references do pretty good, like Spider-Man shirts I've noticed. Any Marvel characters do really well. NASCAR t-shirts, any racing t-shirts, stuff with fire on it. Star Wars shirts I've seen do well. So really just anything, if the shirt's older than like 2005 and it's a pretty cool graphic, chances are that someone's willing to buy it. You can learn the market on this stuff better just by looking at pages that resell clothing and see what's selling. Vintage Nike windbreakers, I know that's not t-shirts, but vintage windbreakers and coach jackets always do really well. So take with that information as you will. I've made a pretty good amount of money on jackets. I don't really go to garage sales as much anymore, so I haven't really looked through a whole lot of t-shirts recently. But I follow a couple people on Instagram that make a pretty solid living doing this, and it's pretty easy just because the average person doesn't realize that their old t-shirts are worth so much money. The next item is going to be like collectibles and Lego sets, and like basically just anything that's collectible that falls under a couple certain brands. There's stuff that's highly sought after when it comes to collectibles, such as bobbleheads and figures, and a lot of different, like a couple different things. For me, what I've looked into is like figures from the 90s, like action figures, that kind of thing, and Lego sets. As I've gotten into Lego investing, I've made a video about it like a week ago. I've realized that a lot of older Lego sets are going for money even if they're out of the box, just because people are wanting to put these together, and since they don't make them anymore, you know, there's a demand for them. So this is a pretty easy way. I've personally picked up some collectibles at garage sales before. I've picked up some bobbleheads and made some pretty good profit margins on them. And I just think that they're fun to look for. It's something that you're probably not going to see most of the time, but it's definitely something to keep your eye out for. Old toys have an entire market to it that I really don't know a whole lot about. I just know that they're a pretty good profit margin because the average person doesn't know that they're selling these old toys or whatever for, you know, dirt cheap. They don't know what they go for on the secondhand market. The fourth item is going to be books, and this is one that I personally haven't dove in a whole lot to. I'll pick up some books to read, but I'll never pick them up to sell. But I follow a couple people on Instagram, and there's entire communities of people that literally just go and get books from people, and a lot of people are willing to give books away for free. A lot of people that what I've seen them do is they'll set up posts on like Facebook groups that are like, hey, I'll come take any books off your hands. And the reason why they're doing this is because they're selling them to Amazon. Well, not to Amazon, but through Amazon. So if I was to go on Amazon and I wanted a book that came out in like 2004, I could find it on there, and then whenever, you know, whenever I buy it, it then comes from you, the person that is selling the book. So you would ship it to Amazon's warehouse, and they would ship it to me, the buyer. This can be done on like a massive scale. The profit margins to be made doing this are in textbooks, I believe, because textbooks are expensive and people are willing to just give them away typically. They've just been sitting in their house for like 10, 15 years, you know. They don't really have intrinsic value when it comes to what the person selling it thinks they're worth. So these are just pretty good items to sell in general, and I really would like to get into book selling. I've honestly just been lazy and haven't really looked into it a whole lot, but I do know that you can use the app on your phone. It's called Scout IQ, and you can scan the barcode of the book and it'll tell you if the book's profitable or not. So that's pretty cool. I think if you pick up books for free just from like book pickup, then like you're guaranteed to make money, you know, depending on how much you value your time. You're going to be profitable if you're picking up the materials for free. It's just a matter of your time and how much you decide you want to spend, you know, packing up books and shipping them out. Those were just a couple different items that I've thought of. I know there's a lot more, like there's a lot of subcategories. For example, video games. I could have got into like video game consoles to look for. Subcategories include like Game Boys, you know, certain collectible systems and stuff like that. When it comes to clothing, I barely, you know, took a tip off the iceberg. You could talk about shoes, you could talk about vintage jeans, you're talking about a lot of different subjects. When it comes to toys, you could talk about, you know, collectibles that aren't even necessarily like toys, but are more like actual collectibles, such as old watches and stuff like that. There's money to be made. So I know that I definitely didn't touch like every subject possible. I just touched the biggest ones that I have understood to be pretty profitable in the past couple years. And honestly, they're pretty cool topics. I'm pretty interested in all four of them, so I'm kind of knowledgeable on them. Not super knowledgeable, but I kind of have an understanding of how the markets work on them. So that's why I decided to make this video. Other than that, I think there are probably a lot of items that I don't realize are really profitable at garage sales and, you know, secondhand sales. With that being said, you could put down in the comments below and educate me on like what are some of the biggest items you've made profit on. I've seen some pretty crazy stuff online, like soccer balls that sell for a lot of money and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm still new to the whole like retail arbitrage and reselling thing, but it's super interesting, and I'm, you know, genuinely interested in seeing what's the most profit you've made on a single item. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this quick little video that I decided to make today. And yeah, subscribe for more. Like the video if you did enjoy it. I'm trying to get to like 600, 700 subscribers here pretty soon. The goal is to hit 1,000 by the end of the year, but based off the rate that I'm growing, I guess we'll see how that happens. But like I said, if you could like the video, it really helps the channel out a lot, and it doesn't cost you anything. And if this video makes you even $10, then I think a single like would probably be, you know, worth the money. That being said, I hope you had a good day and enjoyed the video.